Y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go. I'd like to call to order. This is the City Commission meeting, Monday, December the 11th, 2023. It's 5:30 p.m. If you'd please rise for the invocation and the pledge. Heavenly Father, we ask that you watch over this group tonight, that you help us to make good decisions for the city of Leesburg. We do this in your name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just one announcement tonight. If you are here for item 6A1, that's the Terra Vista PUD, it has been pulled and will not be discussed at this meeting. So we'll move on to proclamations. What you got?
Yeah, we had an advertising error on that, and so we have to start over on the public hearing notification, so we can't give you a date certain, but we'll follow the protocol, and you will be notified pursuant to the statute, and we'll get it redone.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to item 2, and that's proclamations. The Leesburg High School boys bowling team, state champions. Whereas the city of Leesburg extends congratulations to the Leesburg High School boys Yellow Jackets bowling team for their outstanding 2023 season, which culminated with a victory over the Circle Christian Centurions in the Florida High School Athletic Association State Championship Best of 5 match, and whereas the play of each team member contributed to their overall success, and through hard work, dedication, and a season-long commitment to dominate their opponents, their season ended with a record of 15 wins and 2 losses. And whereas the city of Leesburg applauds the Yellow Jackets boys bowling team and their coaches for their accomplishments and commends Tristan Whitney for also qualifying for the state tournament on an individual level. And whereas the members and coaches of the 2023 Leesburg High School boys bowling team are as follows: Noah Cook, Samuel Fleury, Gavin Foster, Daniel Grabusik, Mason Harding, Landon Keister, Liam Pruitt, Hayden Stubbe, Jackson Whitney, and Tristan Whitney. Mike Urban was the head coach, and Emily Bailey, the assistant coach. Now, therefore, I, James A. Burry, Mayor of the City of Leesburg, do hereby proclaim the exemplary sportsmanship and achievements of the 2023 Leesburg High School boys bowling team, recognize the skill and perseverance that led to their 2023 state championship, thank them for being exceptional ambassadors of our city, and wish them continued success in the future, in their future endeavors. Go Jackets. Come on, get around. How's that? Thank you, guys. Good job.
Congratulations.
Congrats, good job.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yes. Yes, hi. How are you? Yes.
Congratulations. Lovely man.
this point, we're going to move on to presentations. We first have some Employee Service Award recognitions.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Melissa Arriaga, Director of Human Resources. I'd like to, first of all, thank all the family members and coworkers that are here today along with their fellow peers to recognize them for their years of service. So we'll get started with our 5-year recognitions, and we'd like to start with an electric apprentice lineman, Mr. Daryl Blanton.
Good both ways.
Congratulations.
Darrell, did you want your family to come up and take a picture? You sure? Okay. His family is here with him today. Cute little kids. Okay, they got dressed up for the occasion, so the family wants to come up and take a picture.
Oh, cute. The mom family.
Oh, my goodness. I thought the boss was coming.
Oh, can be bashful.
Congratulations, Darrell. Congratulations. Next, we have Benjamin Lamfant. He is a senior police officer with our LPD. Benjamin Lamfant.
That's right. I'm very family too.
Oh, yes. Of course.
Next, we'd like to recognize Jonathan Pearson. He is a maintenance worker 2 in Public Works, serves in our grounds division. Congratulations, Jonathan. Congratulations. Next, on to our 15-year awards. We would like to recognize our airport manager, Ms. Tracy Dean, for 15 years of service. Congrats. Next is our Desmond McLean. He is a solid waste operator in Public Works, and he has served in that division for the last 15 years. Congratulations, Desmond. Next, we would like to recognize Claudia Procco. She is a library support services manager and has also been at the library for the last 15 years. Congratulations. Next, we go on to a major milestone. We have a 30-year recognition for Lieutenant Nicholas Romanelli. Nick has started with as a police officer, and today he's a lieutenant. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And lastly, and last but not least, we would like to recognize our own city manager for 10 years of service. Right in the front there. Al started with us on December 16, 2013, so congratulations for 10 years, Al. Thank you very much.
Give it just a minute. All right, we'll move on now. We have a second presentation. This is for the downtown parking study done by Public Works. Cliff?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. Public Works was tasked to take a look at the parking situation downtown. In that, we enlisted the services of GAI, our consultant, Mr. Blake Drury. He was also prominent in the downtown master plan, so he may look familiar. So these are the findings of the studies that we worked together to complete. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Drury.
Hi, good evening. Is there a clicker or just I'll sort of say next? Okay, that's fine. Thank you for having me. My name is Blake Drury. I'm Assistant Vice President with GAI Consultants. As Cliff mentioned, we have been involved in Leesburg for a few years, and were asked a couple months ago to take a look at downtown parking, specifically the 5 things that you see on the screen here, to start with documenting location and amount of parking and help you sort of understand on-street versus off-street, public versus private. After that, we were tasked with making general assumptions about parking demand. So parking demand, you could go way, way, way down a rabbit hole and study that. For this study, we were asked to estimate it using sort of industry standard rates, and so we did that. We'll talk about what that is, and then to compare sort of supply and demand and start to make some analysis of that, and then to, as it relates to on-street parking, talk about conformance to standards. So there are a number of different standards that on-street parking could be measured by in terms of dimensional standards and sight lines and other things. And so we did that at a more granular level, and then came up with recommendations based on all of that analysis for parking additions or modifications or improvements. So we'll go to the next slide. This is the study area, so sort of a couple blocks on either side of Main Street, essentially from where the westernmost public parking lot is, all the way through past the library on the east, and then from the water facility on the south, all the way past where we are now, up to Meadow Street on the north. And so this is the area that we focused on. As I said, the first, we'll go to the next slide. The first thing we looked at is, in fact, circulation. So before we can think about parking, we got to think about how people get to parking. And so I think it's important to recognize that, Main Street is a special condition. It's the pedestrian environment that is most identified with downtown. It's the place with the most sort of activity. And that is also a place with a lot of on-street parking. And so we want to recognize that. The other streets that create the grid, I think it's important to notice there's mostly two-way streets, but the one-way pair that runs on either side of this building creates some sort of challenges for circulation, as it were. It also creates some opportunity for on-street parking given the size of the street. And then one thing that I think is notable is that as you move east, streets have sort of been able to fall out of the network as the college has grown and tried to consolidate its campus. And while that doesn't have a huge impact on parking per se, it does have an impact on circulation and how people get to and from parking. And so I think that's important to note as we talk about some of the conditions within downtown. So if we go to the next slide, I think that one will show, we'll go past that, the location and amount of parking. So in terms of off-street lots, what you see on the map here is the lots that are in blue, what we called restricted. So those are off-street lots that don't have general public parking. And you can see the number of spaces that are in each lot there. The orange lots are public lots, and you can see the number of spaces there. And then in pink, we highlighted the garage. And so in total, it is just a little over 750 spaces. About 350 of those are public, and about 400 of those are private. And so as we go to the next slide, as we break that down a little further and start to look at on-street spaces, there are almost 300 on-street spaces within the study area. You can see the distribution of them there in red. So there's about 1,000 spaces within downtown, and that 1,000 might mean something, it might not, depending on how much demand there is. And I think that's the next set of things that we want to talk about. So for that 1,000 spaces, we can go to the next couple of slides. The likely mid-range for parking demand is about 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So if you go to the next slide, you can see that if you look at something like the Institute of Transportation Engineers and their trip generation rates in a suburban environment, they're going to say parking is 3, 4, 5 spaces per 1,000. Those are based on conditions. You can see here, this is a fast food restaurant. Those are based on conditions where you have to drive everywhere and you can't walk between trips. So independently, it may generate that. The other thing to note is that, that's based on 8 studies. So, there is sort of a fallacy of detail here that may not actually exist. So in that case, you're looking at 3, 4, 5. When we do research on actual small downtowns like Leesburg that have done parking demand studies, so they have gone to the detail of figuring out how many parking spaces a specific use is generating, in places like portions of Denver or Winters, California, or Redmond, Washington, that actually references a lot of other studies. All of these done by different firms, I might add, not just one firm that's sort of selling the same thing. What you get to is an average of about, in a downtown where it's walkable, of about 2 spaces per 1,000. That's the demand. And that happens because, as you might imagine, when you go to a store, you're likely not getting in your car and driving and going to another store and generating 2 different trips. You're actually, 2 stores are sharing 1 trip. And so within that environment, that's sort of the overall number that we're looking at. So if we go to the next slide, we've got in these blocks here about 470,000 square feet of non-residential area within the study area. So if you do the math and go to the next slide, that's about 940 That's about 940 spaces that you could imagine would be demand would be generated for those 1,000 spaces. So that's about 90% of the spaces that are in downtown. You could characterize that as probably nearing the max, if you will. You know, it's a case where you probably want to have some freeboard there in terms of the number of extra spaces that are unused. But that probably isn't telling us the whole story. If we look at it in a little bit more detail, what we see is that in those blocks that have off-street parking associated with them, so people can park on the block, that's about 200,000 square feet, and that's 396 spaces. So that's about 1.98 spaces per 1,000 square feet. That's probably right at the number. Now, not all of those people are solely parking in those spaces. Some are probably parking on street, and so there's a little bit of give and take there. But really, that's probably pushing right at the limit for your supply. If you go to the next slide, you can see that in the other blocks, so the blocks that, and this is probably the more important number, the other blocks that don't have parking on them, so they're all utilizing public parking either in the garage, in a lot, or on street, there's 652 spaces, and those are generally, that's giving you about 2.4 spaces per 1,000. So there's a little extra space here, but that is maybe a little bit skewed because a lot of those spaces are in the garage. The garage is probably not as utilized as it could be, partly given its location, partly given its fact that it's sort of distant from where a lot of the demand is really. So if we go to the next slide, what we did is to say, if we think about those spaces where you're parking on street or you're parking in a public lot, you're really probably going to walk at most 400 feet. So that just for scale, that's like 3 short blocks on Main Street. It's like 2 longer blocks. If you want to go deep down a rabbit hole, there's a book called Designing for the Pedestrian by Richard Unterman that talks about how far people will walk. You can look at malls where the ring road from a mall is never more than 500 feet from any entrance to the mall. That sort of holds up in study after study. So we said 400 feet, and what that shows is that among those areas, you can, if you start to break it down a little more, those blocks that are sort of Main to Market, between sort of City Hall and the library on the north side. Those are really the blocks that are the tightest and furthest away from the bulk of the parking. So we've got a few large lots. We've got a lot of competition for on-street spots, and then we've got the garage that probably is a bit underutilized. So you might imagine that those are the places where parking is tight and where we probably should be looking for maybe some other parking opportunities. So given all of that, if we go to the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about parking standards. So as I mentioned, there are many places where that you can find standards for parking. Just so that we can get the 3-letter acronyms out of the way, the UVC is the Uniform Vehicle Code, the MUTCD is the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. The Florida statutes have codified some parking standards, and then for state roads and county roads, the Florida Green Book, which is FDOT's Manual of Uniform Minimum Standards for Design, Construction, and Maintenance for Streets and Highways, you can see why they call it the Green Book, is the standard. So these sort of address different elements of on-street parking. If we go to the next slide, the MUTCD for instance, lays out parking dimensions, so length and width. It also has this note that you can see highlighted that says 20 feet from the front of a parking space to a crosswalk, and it says 20 feet minimum per UVC. The UVC was something that was started back in the 20s and 30s when the states started to want to have uniform traffic laws. And so a consortium got together and wrote the UVC. What actually happened then is that language from the UVC got codified in statutes. So if we go to the next slide, if you look at state, and here's some of the stuff from UVC that I thought was, very interesting from the time, talking about, you stopped, but some others didn't, because what you did your place and what we do here is not the same. So trying to keep all that standard, it got codified into the state statutes. And if we go to the next slide, I think what you see here that's in Section 316 in the statutes is verbatim from the UVC. And so this guides, and this says, you can't park a vehicle. The important ones here are within 20 feet of a crosswalk or within 30 feet of a traffic control signal. The really interesting thing is that the statutes also give power to local authority, to the city in this case, to regulate stopping, standing, and parking. So the city of Leesburg doesn't do that. The city of Leesburg defaults back to Florida statutes. But if you go to other places, so I think we've got some examples here. If you look at 4th Street, which is the next slide, you can see a condition where we have on-street parking less than 20 feet from the intersection. And so I think the next slide has some labels on it. Nope. So one of the things we're concerned about in this case is the ability to be able to see a pedestrian as they're entering the intersection, the ability to see a traffic control device like a stop sign as you're entering the intersection. That's what that distance back is really intended for. However, if you go to the next slide, if you go to a place like Plant Street in Winter Garden, fantastic pedestrian environment, you notice that there's lots of parking spaces that are less than 20 feet from the crosswalk. And so what Winter Garden has done is they've adopted by local ordinance a change to the statute language that says you can't park within 10 feet. Or unless a different length is indicated by signs or markings. So essentially giving them the cover to be able to do this locally. A couple other examples of places that do it slightly differently. I think the next slide is the city of Orlando. You can see how close some of these situations are. Orlando defers to their traffic engineer to be able to set that distance. And then if you go finally to the third one, Park Avenue and Winter Park, probably the highest value street in all of Central Florida. Lots of conditions of that same parking close. And they just generally say parking is where it's designated by the city traffic engineer. So there are ways to give yourself flexibility to have a different standard. If you go to the next slide, there are some other backup to that. So the Green Book, while it's meant for state highways, and so imagine it's got to address, Leesburg, Micanopy, Crescent City, Miami, Orlando, various different conditions. What they did several years ago is to incorporate a section about it's called traditional neighborhood design. It really is for small town urban places like Leesburg to make sure that the same standard that you might have on US 27 in Haines City doesn't have to apply to Main Street in Leesburg. And so what they do is they sort of talk about, you don't want to stop you don't want to have parking 20 feet from the crosswalk, but if you have community history with existing installations, that's okay. So, there is wide-ranging guidance on this. I think if you go to the next, slide, the things that I think you really have to focus on are, at every intersection, the view of the pedestrian as you're driving to the intersection. It can be blocked by someone parked too closely, and so you can mitigate that, as you have some places in downtown, by having bump outs where you essentially move the sidewalk out to the edge of the parking so that the person can be seen, the stop sign can be seen. At signalized intersections, it's not as much of a concern because you have the traffic signal that mitigates the sight distance, but we're still concerned with not eclipsing the pedestrian. At four-way stops, the requirement is that when you're at the stop, you can see all the other cars, and so that in downtown, that is generally met. Where the issue is going to come up is at two-way stops. So where crossing traffic doesn't stop, the on-street parking on the near side of the cross street can obstruct the view down the street. So if you go to the next slide, I think we've highlighted some of that. So it really is visibility of the pedestrian entering the crosswalk, the visibility of the stop sign, and then the parking. To get into that space, you got to pull past it and back into it. So you got to move into the crosswalk in order to do it, which is not safe. In addition to the inability to see down the street as you get to the stop sign, which is not as much about the parking relation to the crosswalk as it is the building and other things on the street. So if we go to the next slide, within downtown, you can see all of the different intersection types that we have at our level of analysis, which is not an assignment to go look at every single one of them, but to try to understand order of magnitude about this. If we go to the next slide, you can see the ones in purple, we think have some proximity concern with parking close to an intersection. And we think that all told, that is, probably about 25 spaces that would be impacted, of your 1,040 or so spaces. So not an insignificant number, not like we're wiping out half the parking in downtown, but enough that you should probably be thinking about it. The other thing to note is that a lot of those purple dots are actually in that corridor where we said there's already, we think, a sort of tight number of parking spaces versus the amount of building that's there. So at this higher level analysis, I think the last thing we have here is the next slide is the recommendations. So one, I think, is adopting a local parking ordinance that gives the city engineer the ability to designate parking locations within the city. So it really is a individual analysis that probably should guide where parking happens versus the blanket statement. And there's examples of how that could happen. The second one is that those intersections that we identified on that map, you should probably do an engineering evaluation of them. I think several of them can be solved with bulb outs. A few of them may require some restriping of spaces that ultimately might lose some spaces. On the other hand, there might be some space further back in the block that essentially the parking spaces can slide rather than knocking some out. But I think that deserves a actual engineering evaluation of it, on a intersection by intersection basis. The third recommendation, so those are the those are the ones we would recommend to be analyzed. The third recommendation is that, there are some ways that you can get additional parking, through, for instance, the relocation of the art center. That building could be taken down. Parking could be expanded. You could actually go across 5th Street. The Lifestream parking lot is sort of optimized for just that block. If it were part of a larger block, you could probably get a little more in both buckets. You could increase the footprint and the efficiency. And if you do that, you could make a couple of just minor streetscape improvements to lead people back to Main Street, so that you can encourage the use of the parking lot. There are, I think, opportunities on the laneway plazas on 2nd and 4th to facilitate some more pedestrian movement. Again, that may not be a parking condition, but that may be a way to fix some of the loading and service issues that eat into parking, as well as allow people easier access to and from businesses and parking. And then similar with Market Street as it's recommended in the Main Street Master Plan. There are some alternate parking arrangements that could go along with that might be able to get some spaces back and address pedestrian safety concerns. I think the next couple of slides have some images of where those are, and then the next one is what Market Street could look like from the Main Street Master Plan, and then what the laneway plazas could look like here. So the final one is that just in terms of like maximizing ease of use, you probably need common signage on all the public parking lots. Right now, you've got different kinds of sign types. The messaging is inconsistent. If you go to the next slide, you can see sort of the range of, you've got the ornamental sign, you've got sort of the big P for parking, you've got the public parking. If I see the big P for parking, I don't quite know if that's public or if it's not public. There's at least one lot that's not even labeled as public parking, so I'm not sure I think it's the next slide. Right, so we've got, very clearly here on Main Street, this is public parking. If we go to the next slide, this is public parking, but it's not labeled as such. If you go to the next slide, this isn't labeled in this entrance, but it is labeled in the entrance over behind the white dumpster enclosure, which is the next slide. You can see public parking here. So it's sort of a mystery whether or not I can park there, and what's going to happen if I do, which I think leads to some underutilization of those facilities. So we'll end with the next slide, which is just the group of recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions from the commission? I did have a question more towards Grant. When he talks about the city having our engineer determine what we can park, where we can park, if we go against guidelines, doesn't that put us at in some form of risk? What is our...
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're going against guidelines, it can certainly open up questions about why did you go against those guidelines. I mean, I think it, like a lot of things, the engineer might look at the situation sort of, situation by situation and see whether or not the risk is significant or not, and then everybody could kind of look at that and evaluate, whether that's the type of thing that the city would be interested in doing. But I think the idea is kind of getting somebody with, that professional experience to kind of look at these issues and make determinations on what's appropriate and what's not under the specific circumstances of Leesburg.
Any other questions? Thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
This time we'll move on to public comments. Item 4, this section is reserved for members of the public to bring up matters of concern or opportunities for praise. Issues brought up will not be discussed in detail at this meeting. Issues will either be referred to the proper staff or will be scheduled for consideration at a future City Commission meeting. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment? Please come to the microphone, state your name and your address.
Good evening, Evelyn Gould, 312 Nebraska Avenue, Leesburg, Florida. Good evening again, Commission Board, Mayor Burry, Mr. Minner. I'm here again. Once again, I have, I don't know if I could give this to you, pass it out. Is that okay?
Sure.
Once again, I just wanted to continue to let you know about my concerns about the code violations. The document I sent you is the property on 1138 Main Street that we've been talking about. I just wanted you to see how I feel that this is weaponizing some of our community members. The code violations are currently $150 per day. As you can see from the document, the number that I wrote at the top is what the fines have accumulated to within a year's period, nearly $54,000. How is that even possible or right for someone who's possibly living off of Social Security or of a low socioeconomic status to even bring themselves to remedy any of these situations? I just wanted to leave that for you so you can see that the codes on this property were merely for overgrown weeds and grass. So it kind of seems unreasonable that these kind of fines would be so high for grass. And that's just my opinion on that. The other thing I wanted to bring up today, I was looking on the website for under my city, and I know that you have a couple of boards. You have 2 CRA boards in the city of Leesburg, the Greater Leesburg Community Redevelopment Agency, and the one over at Carver Middle Heights. And I wanted to inquire about the possibility of membership in these boards. I did look at the requirements. It did say that you had to live within a certain area. Unfortunately, I don't live within that certain area. I don't know if these positions on these boards are filled in. I didn't know if there was a workaround or an exception for someone who is willing to be a voice for the people in these areas.
Yeah, Ms. Cloud, I owe you a phone call.
Yes,
so
sir.
my apologies, because you approached the commission last meeting.
Yes, sir.
And the commission instructed me to get with you to talk about parameters of a deal, of how we would work the purchase of that property if when the city would take possession of it.
Yes, sir.
I will give you my card this evening. We will hook up tomorrow.
Okay.
With respect to the other part of your presentation on service on the committees, that's just you to make sure you have your application with the clerk, and when those committee appointments come up, we'll make sure the commission gets it.
Okay. All righty. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Has the property been mowed?
Mrs. Cloud's been mowing it.
Yes,
So
I am currently maintaining the property and continue to do so.
So the fines are no longer accruing?
No, the fines were stopped on February 21st is when I had Officer Pamela Porter come out there and re-inspect the property to make sure that everything was in order.
How long did they accrue to get to that amount of money?
The figure that you have on there is pretty close to that. I think it's actually like 59. It's closer to 59.
59
Thousand. Yeah.
At $150 a day?
$150 a day.
360 days.
Yeah.
Any idea what went a whole year without anybody maintaining the property?
As I mentioned, I was helping the previous owner, and he passed away. He actually passed away before the fines were initiated. And of course, he couldn't appear. He couldn't defend himself. By the time I found out from the family, those had already accumulated before I was able to reach the code enforcement.
A year? A year?
A year.
Okay.
A year.
I remember our discussion from 2 weeks ago. I walked out with you and spoke with you. I do appreciate and respect what you've done. you're not the owner of the property, but you've been maintaining it or doing the work to keep the code violations off. So, yeah, I'm just one voice, but I think Al, the city commission would like. We'll try to work with you as best we can. I know you want to buy the property, and I'm sure we can find some flexibility. I would think. The special magistrate has, the ultimate authority on this, but I'd like to think the city will show some reasonableness on the fines and work with you as a buyer. I know you've been trying to do the right thing, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank
Ms.
you.
Cole, I have a question. What was your address again, please? Location?
I'm at 312 Nebraska Avenue in Leesburg. I'm over by the Harley-Davidson side. So I know I'm outside of that area for the CRA.
But you're in the city limits?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean,
Okay, 'cause I believe you have to be in the city limits, if I'm
I
not
believe so.
mistaken.
West of Canal.
Okay.
By Harley Davidson.
Commission.
To be on the commission or on one of the committees.
Be a resident,
Yeah, because we've had people come here and apply and find out at the meeting they didn't live in the city.
Yes, sir, that's right.
Is that kind of the neighborhood just behind the racetrack? Is that
No, it's Mount Vernon with the Enterprise Rent-A-Car, the Shell.
That's Leesburg.
That's Leesburg, yeah. My parents pay city utilities, so yeah.
That's Leesburg.
She's in District 5.
Enterprise. District 5. Yeah.
The address is in the city limits.
okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's also, and I don't know all of the interworkings of the procedure, but there is a procedure to ask for reductions of fines as well in front of the special magistrate. I'm not sure if that's something that you've applied for.
Yeah,
at this
Pamela
point.
had
You
given
have?
me the packet for that at that time.
Very good. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Al will get with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioner.
Good evening. My name is Vonda Parker, and I am the co-founder of VMAX for One Community, Inc., a not-for-profit 501c3, and my husband, Max Parker, which is the founder. And we wanted to come and publicly thank the city of Leesburg for your continued support in this organization, from the city manager to the commissioners, Parks and Recs, the police department. And we just had a very, very wonderful 12th annual Fashion Designers Runway Showcase at the Leesburg International Airport. We worked very closely with Tracy, and we just want to publicly thank you for your continued support for our Youth Creative Arts program. Thank you.
I didn't come to complain tonight, but I do have a question.
Okay.
I applied for the CRA.
Your name, ma'am?
Oh, Teresa Connor.
Okay.
I applied for the CRA, and I just wanted some dates on when that application going to be completed, to let me know what else I need to do.
Do we have
After the regular meeting. The organization at 5 and then the regular meeting at 5:30. The advertisement said that applications in like this at end of December. I'm trying for the January 8th meeting. For all the boards.
Do we have it? You're specifically asking for the CRA boards.
Yeah.
So the sidebar here is the CRA boards are appointed for a term. We have 2 CRA boards that have public appointments that the entire commission appoints to the body. The Carver Heights CRA and the Downtown CRA. In the Carver Heights CRA, there's 2 positions. The city commission makes up 5 for a 7-member board. You have to live within the Carver Heights CRA. For the Downtown CRA, or the Greater Leesburg CRA, it's 5 members of the commission plus 2. And Canal Street, I believe, is the divider. In the box, you have to be east or west. Those are appointed for a term of how many years, Andy?
4 years.
And when did we appoint last? So we've got a vacancy, one vacancy on the Downtown CRA, on the east. Betty Stevens serves now as a rep from, I got to think where the CRA
She's
building,
with the
she's
CEC.
west. She's east.
Okay,
She's
so it's
east.
west.
She's on that side of Canal. When is her term up?
The end of the year.
End of this year?
31st. Yes, sir.
And then we have an opening, then we have, and then so we have a current opening that's going to serve out a certain amount of term. Then on the Carver Heights CRA, we have one opening?
Two.
Two
That will-
openings
Both of those in December 31st
of this year.
of this year.
There you go. So there's 3 positions opened.
I want Carver Heights area.
Okay. And I'm assuming your app is in with Andy. And
Yes,
we'll get that to the
I
commission.
yeah, I
And then
received
Andy,
that they had,
So then
gotten
on
it.
January 8th, we'll be making those appointments.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Tim Harnage. I live in Lake Denham Estates, and I need to ask. Well, the reason I'm here is there any way we can look into getting more speed limit signs, because there's where Lake Denham Estates is settled. When you come off 27, there's a half a mile straight lane. There's nothing out there. Then it runs into the development. That half a mile has 2 speed limit signs on it, one on either end that says 25 miles an hour or other posted. That's the only speed limit signs in the entire neighborhood of 567 homes. Is there any way that we can get more speed limit signs posted? Because we have a lot of issues with speeding, especially on that main drag, people passing people. Many times people almost getting hit at Lake Denham just because people just drive too fast, way too fast. And what's the possibility of maybe getting a little more law enforcement to maybe drive through and kind of keep an eye on this? Because that half-mile drag strip, people just act like it's their own personal runway down through there. So we have a lot of kids that go through there. The school bus drops off that road, so there's a lot of issues. The other thing is that I had came here probably about a year or so ago and asked y'all questions about a noise ordinance. Is there any noise ordinance of any kind whatsoever in the city of Leesburg?
There is a noise ordinance. I'm not overly familiar with all of the details of it, but there is something on the books in the code. Al, do you know any more specifics about it?
A bunch of questions there you asked. Rob, will you look at your phone real quick? So question on the noise ordinance. We do have a noise ordinance. The noise ordinance allows and gives a lot of discretion to the police officer to issue the citation. You know, if there's a noise ordinance, we get there, you call the police department comes out. If they identify a noise, it's within the officer's discretion to issue that. We do not have a noise ordinance per se that gives certain decibel levels. We've had this conversation many a times, and the commission in general has opted not to implement a noise ordinance that's related to decibels, to where you come out, it's got to be certain decibel level and issued. I don't have a reason for why we have not done that. I think essentially we've opted that the existing process works well. It's easy to enforce. It's not problematic, and it gives the discretion to the officer. The answer to the question I asked you? Okay, I figured. So I will give you my general answer and then wait for the chief to yell at me offline if I give out information that's maybe too high level. Lake Denham is special in that its streets have multiple issues that we're aware of. Its streets have issues with maintenance and potholes, and its streets have issues with signage, and its streets obviously have issue with speeding. We are currently working with the developers of Lake Denham to address maintenance on those roads and other signage issues. The problem in larger scope is that Lake Denham streets are still private streets. Therefore, they're not under the city's jurisdiction to sign and maintain. We anticipate maybe taking those streets over through a dedication to the city, but the city's not going to be in the process to want to accept those streets until we know that the developer has fixed them correctly. Our Public Works Director and Public Works staff has been in constant maintenance with your developer to make those repairs. To date, those repairs haven't been made. Another example of that situation is the guardrail that is broken. The guardrail, again, is on a private street, so it's not the city's responsibility to fix. But Cliff and the Public Works Department has been getting after, if you will, those developers to get that fixed. I do not think directly and candidly that it's in the city's interest to take your private roads until such time that they're built to a standard that the city will accept.
Mm-hmm.
after Lake Denham was constructed, we saw that this was going to become an issue for future development, and we have changed policies. And we have changed policies in terms of enforcing more the development of streets so that we don't have these repeat issues with Lake Denham. So while Lake Denham, I understand, is an issue for the residents who live in Lake Denham, hopefully in the future we won't be dealing with this because we did change our policy on dedication and acceptance of streets through PUDs. For years, the city practiced a policy of stormwater and private streets were private, and we didn't accept dedication. But we saw as development started becoming, Lake Denham was one of those, that this policy needed to be changed, and we have changed that. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to fix some of the issues that you all are addressing, but as I said, Public Works is working with you on that diligently. As far as traffic control now, the question I asked the chief via text here was, can we issue tickets to private street? The short answer is going to be yes. So what we'll do on that is we will get some police officers out there, and we'll make an attempt to, at least on that linear entryway into Lake Denham, we'll get some police officers out there and get some police presence to help you.
Now, a couple months ago, I know I'm going over, a couple months ago, they had put out one of those trailer signs where it would flash if you were going over 25 miles an hour. And about 1 out of 10, it wouldn't go off on them. So about 90% of the cars, it seemed like, was speeding down that road. And I was told, or my understanding was, is that that device was monitoring traffic, and that they would use the information off of that device to figure out if they need to put speed bumps on that road to cause traffic to slow it down. Is that just a farce, or I'm being told a tale?
No, there are some studies the police department can do to determine when speeding happens, when it occurs, time of day, and those type of things. I would reference you to the chief, and if, maybe we can do some of those studies for you. We have done some of those studies. I don't know if we did in Arlington Ridge, but I know we had similar complaints. I don't think we did it in did we? I know we did it in Legacy.
Yeah,
Legacy had some issues with speeding. We did some studying, and it turned out that a lot of the speeding issues were related back to service-type trucks, not residents. I'm not saying that's the case in Lake Denham, but if you sidebar with the chief, we can get that study set up, and we'll take a look at it for you.
Okay. All right. I appreciate your time.
Al, do we have a bond on this one, or is this one that was
We
done?
do not.
Okay. I know we changed our
We
policy.
do not. This was probably one of the last subdivisions that we did where the PUD stated that the streets may be adopted, but our enforcement practices then was that no, we will not accept dedication of streets or roadways. But it was based when these complaints started generating. I'm going to say probably a couple years ago. That's when we started looking at the policy, and we noticed that, we being the city noticed pretty quickly after folks started moving into Lake Denham that we saw deterioration of the road surfaces. We knew that this was going to be an issue. We knew that we would get these type of complaints. So the first thing that we did was we changed the organizational structure at the Public Works Department, and we came in and we made some policy modifications so that future development will have dedicated streets. But then we changed staff, we added staff, and we put ourselves in a position that we can monitor construction better. Moving forward, I feel like we won't have this issue. It is an existing issue, and we're doing our best to remedy it.
I just wanted to jump in. I'm sorry.
No,
there is a bond for Lake Denham.
There is.
Yes. Yeah, we do have a bond.
For a maintenance bond?
Yes, sir.
Do you happen to know how much it is?
The time it expired, but we had gotten a claim out to the developer before the expiration.
And I was just trying to help you out.
Everything's still. So there is a bond. What the discussion is when the city does take over streets, the city requires a maintenance bond for the roads for a 2-year period. And so for Lake Denham, there is a bond for at least some of those streets out there, and there has been a claim that's been made on that bond. So that's back to what Al was saying. Public Works has been working with the developer to try and fix some of those issues, and they're doing it with a bond in place at this point. So there is some relief potentially down the road on some of those issues with the maintenance problems and deterioration of the road. It's something that they are looking at, but I just wanted to jump in and make sure everybody knew that there was a bond for that one.
Now, once that bond gets released, is at that point in time, is it going to become the city of Leesburg streets to take care of once that bond is released to the developer?
If the city chooses to accept dedication.
Right.
Okay.
And at this time, we would not accept dedication because we know the streets aren't built to a standard.
So it could default to the HOA.
Yes.
Which is not, yeah, I know you don't want to hear that, but
I'm on the HOA.
I was guessing that.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm here. I'm trying to figure out what I can do for the residents I represent to see if we can get the
Visit with
streets.
Cliff as well.
So
that is.
these are issues that are being brought to us in HOA meetings, and I'm bringing it to you, saying there's so many dangerous issues with the driving and the speeding and everything like that. So, all right, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Any other public comment?
Mayor, City Manager, Commissioners, I too live in Lake Denham Estates.
Your name,
My
sir?
name is Steve Brown. I too live in Lake Denham Estates, and I would like to ask you guys, I don't know if it's up to you guys or where to go with this, but I would like somebody to potentially do a traffic study about getting a stoplight put in for people to get in and out. There's been accidents there. I have seen close calls. People are backed up trying to get in and out of there. You know, and I understand that there's going to be townhouses going in right there on that corner as well. So I'd kind of like to get ahead of the game. I don't know if that's something you guys can help us with.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a DOT, a little above our pay grade. So.
it's FDOT?
Yes, sir. We have no authority on traffic lights.
Okay, I didn't know if the study had to come from you guys or...
No, sir.
No, that's fine. I just don't know where to go, so I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Elliot Ward. I'm a new business here. I'm a new chamber member on the board, and I'm the one that's really pushing this parking thing. It's working as far as the enforcement from the police department. There are still some issues. The parking along 7th there, which is along the pathway side, it's employees. We got the Leesburg Business Centers adhering. It's employees that are parking that are taking up customers. That's the simplicity. We have enough parking. We need signage. I'm a sign guy. I'm also been with my dad, which is a downtown redevelopment in Titusville for 10 years and redesigned the entire thing. We're offering our expertise, our service at no charge to get this done and help. I appreciate the enforcement from the chief from on down and with Alan and Alan, excuse me. I'm here to serve just like you guys, and we're a new business, and I love what I see here. And I just wanted to say thank you, but I still need some help. I need some enforcement and some knocking on doors to stop the employees from parking. That's what the problem is. We personally, we hike it and we'll park at this structure and walk it out. That's how important it is to us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? All right. Moving on to item 5, the consent agenda. Routine items are placed on the consent agenda to expedite the meeting. If the commission or staff wish to discuss any item, the procedure is as follows. Number 1, pull the item or items from the consent agenda. Number 2, vote on remaining items with 1 roll call vote. 3, discuss each pulled item and vote by roll call. Are there any items the commission would like to pull?
5C10 and 5C11.
5C10 and 11.
5C8.
5C8. Any other items? Can we get a motion for approval?
Make a motion to approve all remaining items.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Connell?
Yes.
Commissioner Eastman?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Berry?
Yes.
Mayor Burry?
Yes. Someone please introduce 5C8.
I'll introduce and ask to be read by title only.
Resolution amending the existing investment policy to increase the allowed cash percentage for intergovernmental investment pools and to add language as required by the state of Florida.
Move for approval.
Second.
Discussion.
Well, I'm the one who pulled it. I guess my questions are probably directed at Jim. I'm sure I'm okay with it, but I just wanted to go on the record. We're being asked to increase the, what do you call it, the allocation on this one investment fund from 15 up to 50%. I was just curious what the rate differential was between the two accounts, and I just want to hear that you're comfortable with the risk. Rate's a function of risk, so there's a spread which I don't understand. And then my other comment, I talked to Al about this today, was there hasn't been any defaults for a while, but with the economy wobbling a little bit, I just we go through economic cycles. I just don't want to get caught where the city loses money on some investment that would have been good 5-10 years ago, but not now. So
the reason I requested this was that particular section of the investment policy. We've got money market funds allocated up to 50%, and then the local pools at 15%. Well, they're the same exact thing.
Okay.
They are.
They look very close. I just
couldn't.
couldn't.
No difference in them.
Okay.
And the rates are between. So we have 3 investment pools that we're in, and we're already over the 15%. So I can get money out of there tomorrow if I want it out of there.
Understand.
But we're getting the best rates right there right now. And obviously, if the Fed starts lowering rates, those rates will go down as well. But I can pull the money out of there anytime.
You answered my question right there. I looked at the different investment options. They look fairly close. I didn't look at it, dissect it that far. You tell me they're basically the same. I am fine, Jim. I just wanted to raise the issue.
I'd much rather have it in a government-authorized investment pool than in Fidelity or Schwab or somebody.
Okay. And just to qualify why I pulled it, I think the one that jumped out at me is I believe there were obligations from other municipalities, and maybe I misread that. That we were buying.
I mean, they can invest in any AAA bond type thing. So.
Okay, you've answered my question. Thank you, Jim. I'm good.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Eastman?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Berry?
Yes.
Commissioner Connell?
Yes.
Mayor Burry?
Yes. Someone please introduce 5C10.
I'll introduce and ask to be read by title only.
Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Leesburg, Florida, accepting a conveyance of real property from Leesburg Partnership 3, LLC in furtherance of the asset transfer agreement between the City of Leesburg and Leesburg Partnership, Inc., Leesburg Partnership 2, Inc., and Leesburg Partnership 3, Inc., and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Discussion.
I pulled this just because I know a lot of private businesses currently use this lot. So will we be sending them a letter to tell them that they need to find elsewhere to park their private vehicles?
Are you meaning like permanent vehicles will be in this lot?
Well, they park them all night long during the day.
We will do that.
You and I talked about this before, I think. And when the deed that was on the property.
Perhaps. I trust you. Okay. I remember. No, but so obviously the use needs to be a public use. So we'll notify the public that that's a public lot and it needs to be enforced. And we'll enforce it as a public lot.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Berry?
Yes.
Commissioner Connell?
Yes.
Commissioner Eastman?
Yes.
Mayor Burry?
Yes. Someone please introduce 5C11.
Introduce and ask to be read by title only.
Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Leesburg, Florida, approving funding from the General Fund of the City of Leesburg in fiscal year 2024 up to $500,000 for Bike Fest 2024, authorizing the city manager to make individual purchases and/or incur individual expenses up to $75,000 within the budget, providing conditions and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second. Discussion.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I did. So, two things on this. It was the last meeting or a couple meetings ago. The commission took an informal vote to go ahead and fund Bike Fest. Maggie Leiden made that presentation, and essentially we were going to pull $500,000 from the general fund reserve account as the seed money to do different things, get vendors, start all the things that go along with Bike Fest. And we provided a matrix to you, which showed that we thought we'd break about even from using the $500,000, remembering that this money was separate and apart from the events division monies. One of the requests also in that was that the city manager, actually we made the presentation to you, was $100,000 for the city manager to spend up to $100,000. I put in there 75. That was my error. That was, I forgot the $100,000 request. So I'm asking to amend that from 75 to 100,000. But the secondary and the second reason, but the primary purpose of this is because when we endeavored to do the fiscal year 24 budget, we didn't know that we were going to create an events division until the end. And we didn't know we were going to take over Bike Fest, and the partnership was folding. Although there are some of those whispers going on. Well, not whispers. We had the public discussions. But but long story short, because of the amount of money involved, I think there needs to be some transparency of the transfer, which is memorialized in the resolution. My inclination is that Bike Fest will be a success, and everybody will enjoy it. We'll break even, maybe even make a couple of dollars, which we will use for civic purposes, as the statute says. And then potentially moving into fiscal year 25, what we'll do is we'll create probably a Bike Fest division in the budget, if that's where the commission wants to go in the future. But until then, the purpose of the resolution is just to publicly provide us some transparency, a formal notice that we're shifting those monies. It has this purpose, and then it did have the spending differences. The primary reason for the increase in the spending authority for the city manager is that so entertainment can be booked without having to come back to commission.
Bike Fest, I think over the years there were, and maybe some people in the audience can help me out, but I think the partnership bought some insurance at times for weather. That's my only concern with Bike Fest is weather. I mean, I don't know if that's, I think the partnership stopped doing it. I think it became cost prohibitive. Is that correct?
I think it went the other way. I think it started out where they didn't do it, and then the last couple
I thought
years,
they did not. I see Phil Braun back.
They did do it this last time. So that's something we'll throw in the mix, and I'll have that discussion with Travis.
I have no idea what it cost. I just throw that out for discussion purposes.
We'll look into it.
Yeah. For this discussion, I think what Al is asking for is a motion to increase that spending authority to $100,000.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that.
Well, I do have a few. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Not necessarily related to his spending limit on this, but I asked when this came up, I don't know, two meetings ago, and I'm not a big fan of spending taxpayer money to fund special events, especially not this kind of money. And I did ask in the meeting, is those revenue numbers, are they solid?
They're as solid as I think we can get for right now. Where we got the history from was from the partnership numbers. What we eliminated was the alcohol number, if you recall. So we eliminated the alcohol number because there was just a variance on that from in good years for the past three. We looked at numbers from 19, 20, 21. And then we had the blip, and then the start, and then the blip, and then again with COVID. But the last solid number was probably the 19 Bike Fest, and I want to say off the top of my head, the net on alcohol sales was about $250,000. So obviously in 20, you had the COVID year and you had everything canceled. But then we did a one-day Bike Fest, and I think the net on alcohol was around $20,000. But then in November it was about $50,000 when we did the November Bike Fest, and then this past year it rained the whole time, and I think the net was around $75,000. So that alcohol only. So when Travis presented the budget to me and then we made the presentation for the commission, I specifically left out the alcohol number for two reasons. Because it was all over the place, number one. And number two, I wasn't sure how the city was going to be involved with alcohol. So I wanted to present you a budget that was without the consideration of alcohol. So the budget that we presented to you showed $500,000 of expenses, $500,000 of revenues, and in that revenue there was only a revenue net for alcohol of about $30,000. So your question, do we feel comfortable with the numbers? I mean, as comfortable as we're going to get, Commissioner, and that's the best answer I can give you. I think Travis and Maggie feel that they felt extremely confident providing you those budget numbers. I share your exact trepidation, taking $500,000 out of reserve. That's hence the reason for the resolution, and I think one of the things, a couple things, I'll end on this, and I won't elaborate more than what I already did because that's what we know. We did get $100,000 or so from the partnership in their closeout, so we have that cash. So now, in accounting-wise, that cash is already in our reserves. So even though we're taking out $500,000, you can kind of think, well, 400 of it is city money, 100 of it is partnership money. So we've got $100,000 that we didn't expect that was in the reserve account. And we're taking out 500. And then the second thing is I think we put together a pretty conservative budget. I think moving into this, that to accept a plus or minus of around $125,000. That's what I would think is a good day. If we lose $125,000, that's a lot. I get it. But I would say that's not a huge loss. And then I think come May and come June, and as we get into the budget, then we're going to need to consider whether we want to do this again. I think you guys felt extreme pressure by the folks who were in the room from the other meeting that said, do this. And pretty much all of you said yes. On the other side of the equation is, if we end up in the black, then we've got good problems to decide. This is a risk venture. I think we've done the best as we can from the data that we have. We'll be having alcohol discussions coming up in the next few meetings. We'll have public discussions. I sent out a memo or an email to the commission, I believe it was this week or late last week, that kind of outlined some parameters of how we can do alcohol sales with the partnership. Chamber, thank you. There are kind of two models, kind of do it private sector. The pros and cons to that is if we bring in a company, we feel like it's really just a loss, a gain for us. Whatever they give us, we get X% of that. We had a proposal for 30%, but I think the negatives of that are we lose some control as far as knowing exactly how much money was coming in, although I'm sure every private corporation will be completely honest with us about what they do and they don't sell. But the bigger issue there is Bike Fest has always had the umbrella of that this was an event for the community, and monies that are raised by Bike Fest go back to community. So when immediately we go to that outside group, even though it may be easy for us, we lose accounting and we lose the autonomy of having public money. So I did speak with Sandy Moore from the Chamber. She's going to have a conversation with her board to see where they're at on this. In fact, I think she has that conversation tomorrow. Sandy will give me a debrief, and then I'll be back with you on that. So we'll have more discussions on that. So I know that was a long answer to an easy question, which was, do you feel comfortable that we'll make money? And I feel as comfortable as I'm going to.
Okay, I mean, I voted yes based on the numbers that staff prepared that it was going to be a break-even status. I said, again, I don't agree with spending a large amount of taxpayer money to fund a special event. The other question I would have is, does any other jurisdiction, city or county, do they participate at all in helping us fund this event? Because they're all being benefited from it.
I will say the county does. We will receive, I think, what was the budget? $40,000. So back to the TDC money. So historically, the county had provided the TDC money, tourist development money, heads and beds tax. For this event, for advertising and different things, they provided that to the partnership. We've confirmed, or we're confirming with the county, that they will provide that contribution to us. So the county is the one governmental agency that we know for sure is providing money.
And you're thinking that's 40?
40, which is their typical amount that they've cut for the Bike Fest from TDC funds. So we'll be beneficiaries of that. In all honesty, I wouldn't expect other municipal corporations to contribute to our event. Other municipal corporations do contribute to their events. We had that little bit of a discussion when we talked about creating the events committee. Other than the broad numbers I gave you at that time, I can't comment on that. But we do, if we go back and review the budget estimate, we had some, again, primary sponsorships, I believe, from Dinch was on there, the county was on there, there was Gator Harley was in there, Progressive was in there. So some of the old contributors that gave to the partnership are willing to give to us. I think those numbers were over the $100,000 number. So I think those are sponsorships that you can bank on. I think you got some other stuff you can bank on with vendors. So again, I feel good with the cut down budget that we gave you, but you know, it's an event we've never managed before. So I don't take asking lightly for the $500,000, and that's why the resolution is here.
Well, I was going to say the projected revenue, I think, was $500,000, and I think $250,000 of that was through advertising. I mean, plus or minus, we've approved this a month ago. How much money have we received from advertising so far, since we're on a very short clock here?
Have we collected any yet, Trav?
Actual checks?
Yeah.
We haven't collected any of the.
Yeah, but that's
$250,000. You got 3 month. You got a 3 month window left.
Yeah, that's not atypical, Commissioner. That doesn't worry me yet.
It worries me.
So just to clarify, we will have at a future meeting the discussion of the pros and cons of going privatized or going with the chamber.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll save my comments for then.
You know, for the benefit of the audience, you know, this is more than Bike Fest. This was, you know, I was very vocal, you know, to support the partnership, keep them going. They decided not to go with these events. We took over them. I was very vocal about, you know, it was a quality of life issue. But, you know, it goes beyond just Bike Fest. Bike Fest is going to, you know, we hope it breaks even. It's their projections, but it does go beyond that. We had the event last, the Christmas parade and other, you know, just all these other events. So I just want to point that out. That it is more. This is more than just Bike Fest. It's the next fiscal year, providing quality of life to people who live in Leesburg.
So at this point, there's been a request to change the $75,000 to $100,000. Is there a motion from anyone to do that?
I'll make a motion to change the spending authority from $75,000 to $100,000 for Bike Fest.
Yeah, second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Excuse me. Commissioner Berry? Yes. Commissioner Connell?
No.
Commissioner Reisman?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor Burry?
Yes. Okay, so we now have an amended motion up to 100,000. Discussion on that is complete. Roll call.
Commissioner Connell? Commissioner Reisman?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Berry? Yes. Mayor Burry?
Yes. Okay. This time we'll move on to item 6, public hearings and non-routine items. Before we get started on the second reading of ordinances, I'm going to ask Grant to do his magic with swearing in anyone who wants to speak.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If anybody in the audience plans to present any testimony or evidence on these items 6, where are we on? Excuse me. 6A, 2, or 3, if you would please stand and raise your right hand. That includes city staff. Do you swear or affirm that all testimony you'll give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Grant. As I mentioned before, item 6A1, the second reading of the Terra Vista PUD, will be heard at a different date. We do not have that date certain yet. We basically have to start over with it. So we will make that notice when we're sure when that will be. So Dan's telling me we can make it date certain.
Yes, sir. The original advertisement had it as January 22nd. And I made a mistake when I told the commission 2 weeks ago that it was rolling over to this meeting. So since we already had it advertised, we just have to stick to that advertisement.
Stick to that, and that'll be January.
Yes, so the public will be properly informed
22nd.
January 22.
January 22nd. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, would someone please introduce, let's see, this is item 6A2. and 3.
I'll introduce 6A2 and 3 to be read by title only.
Yes.
Okay. 6A2, excuse me. An ordinance amending the future land use map of the comprehensive plan of the city of Leesburg, changing the future land use map designation of certain property containing approximately 36.96 plus minus acres from neighborhood mixed use to general commercial for a property generally located east of the Florida Turnpike and south of County Road 470, lying in Section 17, Township 20 South, Range 24 East, Lake County, Florida, and providing an effective date. 6A3, an ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, changing the zoning on approximately 36.96 plus minus acres from PUD to PUD planned unit development to allow for commercial and multifamily residential uses for property generally located east of the Florida Turnpike and south of County Road 470, lying in Section 17, Township 20 South, Range 24 East, Lake County, Florida, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Andy.
You're welcome.
We'll ask Mr. Miller to come up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Dan Miller, Planning and Zoning. On this property, as Andy indicated, east of the Turnpike, south of 470, consists of 39 plus or minus acres, an undeveloped site for residential and commercial uses. Excuse me. The comprehensive plan is requesting go from neighborhood commercial to neighborhood mixed use to general commercial, and the zoning is just PUD to PUD with revised conditions. The permitted uses include both residential and commercial uses. On the residential side would be 325, a maximum of 352, apartment units. That's a gross density of 12.8 units an acre, which is about what you get on an apartment complex. On the commercial side, it would be general offices, medical offices, pharmacy, veterinary, retail uses such as restaurants, personal services like hair and nails, hotel, daycares, houses of worship. Prohibited uses is basically anything not called out as permitted use. That includes the internet cafes, tattoo parlors, etc. There are some specific standards on this particular development, including 25-foot perimeter buffer. We are asking for that to be undisturbed where there are existing trees so that they can remain in place. Minimum 35% open space, which will be met according to the plan. Maximum building height for the apartments would be 4 stories or 52 feet. And then there are specific access requirements that require the access to come off of 470 on the existing road versus each of the parcels getting a separate access point. There are architectural standards and a very specific amenity package that requires a pool, cabana, gym, playground, dog park, and they're offering some raised bed gardens with a 6-foot wide walking trail. Mr. Mike Rankin of the Land Planning Group of Mount Dora is here to represent the case if you have any other questions.
Any questions for Dan? Any questions for Mr. Rankin? Do we have any public comment? Public questions about this development? No? Commissioners, any other comment? Well, let's do a roll call. That would be on item 6A2.
Do we need a motion?
We've already introduced it.
We introduced it. We don't have a motion.
Okay, so go ahead.
Move for approval.
Okay, second.
Commissioner Reisman?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Berry?
Yes.
Commissioner Cunnell?
Yes.
Mayor Burry?
Yes.
6A3, move for approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Berry?
Yes.
Commissioner Cunnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Reisman?
Yes.
Mayor Burry?
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to 6B. This is first reading of ordinances. Would someone please introduce 6B1?
I'll introduce and ask to be read by title only.
An ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, changing the zoning on approximately 0.08 plus minus acres from City of Leesburg SPUD planned unit development and R3 high-density residential to City of Leesburg P Public to resolve an encroachment from 314 Canal Street onto 300 Canal Street for a property generally located south of Pine Street and east of South Canal Street, lying in Section 26, Township 19 South, Range 24 East, Lake County, Florida, and providing an effective date.
All right. Dan, why don't you come up? Just tell, it's a very small piece, but.
Yes, sir. This is basically a land swap to clear up boundary lines and allow for future development for the Children's Advocacy Center and the CDC Community Development Corporation. They're both, as you know, located on Canal Street. The request would, as our city clerk indicated, would resolve a building encroachment issue from 314 South Canal Street on to 300 South Canal Street, and it would correct a split zoning where one property has two zoning districts on it. That's legal. That's possible. I hate them. So, we would like to clear that up. So it's basically just a simple zoning to a standard zoning district, and doesn't have conditions or anything like that as a PUD or something like that would. It's just a cleanup operation that will help the CDC and the Children's Advocacy Center.
Any questions for Dan? All right. This will be heard again. Do we know?
January.
What is it?
Probably January.
January 8th, Dan?
8th, okay.
Okay, so second hearing will be January 8th. Okay, if we could move on now to non-routine items. Do we need to, I guess we need to introduce A first.
Well, let me give the presentation. I put together a presentation, and if you would cue it up for me. So this is the item C1, which is in reference to Lake Square Mall utility billing. I think to ultimately resolve the issue and get a payment structure of owed utilities back to the city from Lake Square Mall, kind of two-step process needed to be done. First, we proposed the recreation or the creation, rather, of a specialized sewer rate for the mall, and then second, apply that to outstanding or delinquent or unpaid utility expenses through inception of when Village Lake Promenade bought the mall property to now, and then come up with a payment plan. So part one of this is to consider a new sewer rate that's specifically designed for the mall, and part two is to approve a payback plan for the mall. So if you would flip to the slide. So I wanted to step back a little bit and describe to you the billing process for the mall. Essentially, the mall the bill has two components. They receive one bill for water and electric. So that bill goes out automatically. We have a master water meter for all the consumption at the mall, and we have several different meters on electric. But because of the automation and because of the billing, those are easily assembled, so the mall gets one bill. It's basically automatic based on those consumptive reads. Then the mall receives a bill for sewer. Sewer is a little bit more complicated. In a typical household, per se, or industry standard on a sewer bill is whatever you consume in water is the assumption that is discharged in sewer. And then there's two, like with all of our utilities, there's a base rate and there's a discharge rate. But we have different base rates for what type of sewer customer you are: a residential customer, a commercial class 1, a commercial class 2, a commercial class 3. The mall is filled with commercial class 1s and commercial class 3s. Commercial class 1 is considered probably, like, the best examples of that would be a professional service, a lawyer's office, a doctor's office, a bank, something like that. A class 3 is a restaurant. And I think just by the descriptions, you can see why why you use more and why you would charge more. So what happens at the mall is a couple of different things, and I'll get into that next. So just remember that moving forward. The mall receives utility payments two different ways. Next slide. Obviously, we've had some errors and some situations that have occurred at the mall that have led up to where they're at, to where they have this big amount of unpaid bills. And I wanted to review kind of some errors that led to that and put those out there. So I think we've learned from them, and moving forward, that will be corrected. The first process is kind of an error that's of just circumstance and missing stuff, and at the time there's just a lot of chaos going on. If you review the minutes from the April 13, 2020 meeting, I referred to COVID being as the period of managing COVID was like managing a hurricane that never ends. At that time period there was just constant, this is stopped, this is stopped. So it was an interesting time, but without making excuses, I think clearly the errors were that several things kind of mounted at once to why the city ultimately stopped billing sewer. First, we had a change in personnel. Second, we had complaints from the mall about the formulaic approach and the methodology in their sewer bill. And then three, when the commission at their October 13 meeting, 2020, it's in the minutes, when they approved the stopping of disconnects and late fees, all those things culminated to where we dropped the sewer bill and we really never picked it back up. So then that situation existed. Staff did get back to the mall by April of 21 and said, you guys need to start paying. They did. They started paying their water and their electric bill, but they still persisted on the error. But it was really probably not until the fall of 23, moving into the first part of fiscal year 24, where it came to my attention that we'd missed the bus. We missed the ball on reinstituting the sewer bill. That was brought to us by our auditors. I brought that to you. The commission questioned me about it, and by early March of 23, I had a proposal on the mall's desk about how to move forward with billing. Then we got into cash flow situations, and we got into situations where the mall and the county had lease issues, and there's always been kind of a feeling about the mall as to help them so the mall is an important economic development part of the city, and for all those reasons put together, this got stopped. Not making excuses there, but I think that's a fair representation. And then ultimately, I'll take some blame on this because although I knew the mall had a billing complaint with the sewer, my office didn't aggressively start seeking a remedy for that until March of this year. And if you flip the slide. So let me describe to you the current sewer billing methodology. This is important to remember because this is the heartbeat of the mall's discrepancy to the city on how we bill sewer. Since inception, really, at the mall, and I put this picture of the mall up on the map because it's important, because the first thing is there's 104. When we started our initial billing, there's 104 units at the mall. Some of those we would call out parcels. The Ichiban, Dunkin' Donuts, Wendy's, and the bank, those are out parcels. There's 4. Nobody argues with that. And the mall interior had 100 different units. Those units range from Class 1 to Class 3 to Class 2. And we did a count way back when, and the city continued to use that count over different ownerships at the mall. And we never got a complaint on that process until Village Promenade, Lake Village Promenade, or the mall, current mall ownership, started asking questions about the mall. So a number of different units. Each of those units had different classifications, Class 1, Class 3, Class 2. The big jump in price, for example, a Class 1 monthly charge is somewhere about $27 a month, where Class 3 is about $115 a month. So you can see the discrepancy or the variance in the type of use charge. The other policy that the city had was whether that unit was open or vacant or occupied, we still charged you the base bill. Then the next part of the bill is no matter what your what your class use was at the mall, when it came to the consumption charge, we gave them all the class 3 consumption charge. So just like the mall, the base charge changed from $25, $27 to $114, the use charge changes too. $1 per 1,000 or 100 cubic feet, blah, 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 to about $3.45 per 100 cubic feet of water on the class 3 side. When you put all those numbers together, the mall roughly had about a $6,000 month bill on sewer charges alone. So they started to complain about that. Next slide. The one thing that I failed to mention in the methodology that I think really starts to question the methodology of what we used was the mall was charged electric for wastewater that was disposed into city lift stations that were off-site. So the flow at the mall proper, the out parcels, there's 2 private lift stations on the mall. Water comes in from about the water tower at the mall, which is kind of back there by the movie theater, if you will, and then it spreads out through their interior infrastructure. Then wastewater kind of goes back the same way that the water comes in. So at the out parcels, there's a lift station that's privately owned that gets pumped to the lift station in the back, and that gets pumped to lift station number 35. That lift station is off-site. That is a city lift station. Lift station that pumps it then into a system of gravity flows that ultimately flows back to lift station number 35, which is at the airport. So the question in methodology there that really needs to get pointed out was, is it proper, and I'm not going to answer the question, but is it proper for the city to charge a portion of the maintenance and operation of an off-site lift station towards the mall? We did that. As that question rose to us, we did start modifying a lesser charge or no charge for electric off premises to keep them all happy, but eventually the long story short is we never formally corrected that, and the mall was never happy with the way they were billed. Enter COVID, enter lack of payment, and flip the slide. So what we think we need to do to entice them all, if you will, or encourage or force them all into paying their unpaid utility bills that they racked up from the COVID time period, which is about March of 20 to April of 21 on the electric and water side, and really a longer time period from about February of 2020 through the present time of the sewer bill. How do we fix that? So here's my proposal to the commission. Next slide. What we are proposing to do is come up with a better count system at the mall. So if you go back, and I'm sorry, go back. Count system means we need to come up with a better method of accounting for how many actual units are in the mall and what those units are. As the mall has changed hands, some units have closed, some units have been merged, so the mall stipulates that they don't have 104 units. They have 80 units. So, next slide. So the agreement, the philosophy that would then bill only units that are occupied. Don't bill units, base charges. When I say don't bill, it means base charge. Don't bill base charges if you have a vacant unit. Bill if there's an occupied unit, and have a better system of accountability where the onus is on the mall to contact the city on changing of the units. But the agreement is written in a way that it's in the city's favor. So if they undercount and we find out that they undercounted, well, we can go back on them to get the correct proper count. If it's the other way, where we overbilled the mall, but they didn't give us the proper number, now that's on the mall. That's a mall problem. I don't think we'll anticipate that. I think we've had enough communication now that probably once a month or once a quarter we'll be getting with the mall to make sure our unit numbers are correct. But that's fix number one, is make sure we have a proper number of units counted, adequately count what's vacant, what's not vacant, and then bill accordingly. The next thing is to really change the type of classes that are within the mall proper. So back to that picture, mall proper. The lion's share of units in the mall don't have restrooms that are open to the public. They're basically a toilet and a sink where employee onlys will go and use the bathroom for restroom purposes, but it's employee only. That consumption is not a derivative of any user class that we have, but we had charged them all a Class 1 fee for the right for those units to have a bathroom. So in English, what I'm saying is we charge them all at a rate that would be typical to a Class 1 usage. I'm proposing to the City Commission that having an employee-only restroom, water closet, and sink is not a Class 1 use, and it's not a residential use. So we came up with the base bill, Anna, of what is probably the typical use. And I would say the typical use of an employee restroom is probably about 90% less than a single-family residence. So remember, a single-family residence, you have restroom use, you have kitchen use, you have bathroom use, you have showers, you have dishwashers, you have irrigation. So that base bill is about $25. We're talking about a water closet and a sink versus that picture. So what would be an equitable base bill for that type of hookup? I'm recommending to you $5.28 a month. So it's substantially discounted. That number is the heartbeat of the discount that is in this, is collecting, identifying what we're going to call Class 1 internal mall use. And in the resolution on the new rate, we define what that is. So we count up how many potential Class 1 internal mall units there are. There's 56. 20 of them are vacant. We bill a monthly bill, a base bill, a $5.28 on the occupied, which is 36. So 36 times 5.28 would be $189. Just on the math real quick, in the old way that we did this, or the current way that we did this, it would have been more like 50 or 70 times 114. So we were charging Class 1 a Class 3 type rate on that again. The next one is there are Class 3 uses in the mall proper. We identified that there's 16, 7 are vacant, 9 are used. The 9 that are used that we're counting is the movie theater, Viaport, the entertainment center, the main bathroom that's by the courtyard, and some of the different restaurants that are within the mall. Some of the big stores too, like Belk, like the bookstore, they have a public restroom in it. The bookstore, for example, has a cafe, so that would be a restaurant. So that's how we calculated that. So that times the base bill, 114, that your bill. We also identified that now the configuration of the mall is there's actually 4 units that don't have a restroom at all. So they technically were recommended to you shouldn't have a base bill. So in the mall proper, 76 units. What's simple and clean and easy is the out parcels, the 3 restaurants and the bank. 3 Class 3s, 1 Class 1. So that's how we get 80 total. They get the same bill. So that's part 1. Part 2 is the use. Right now we bill the mall at $3.48 per 100 cubic feet of water that goes into the mall. Because most of the consumption is Class 3, that's a pretty accurate charge. But again, you see where there's some de minimis usage in there that's not completely Class 3. So we estimated about 90% of what is used and discharged at the mall is Class 3, so we come up with a special use rate for the mall, which reflects about 90% of the value of the Class 3 discharge. So instead of 348 per 100 cubic feet, we say 316 per cubic feet. That's still a pretty significant bill for the mall, but I think it closer reflects the discharge that's coming out of the mall. Next slide. When you put all this in now and come back to how much does the mall owe the city, it's in two pieces. The first piece is sewer. So over the term, since the current owners have owned the mall, if you calculate their consumption on sewer from when they bought the mall, October 18, through the end of this month, by the way, we bill December 1st, so we know that the end of this month already occurred, which, by the way, is already calculated in this number, they would have paid $494,000. We know that they paid us $212,000. So if you stick with your current rate, then the mall would owe us about $281,000 in sewer charges through December 31st. On the electric side, we know that the amount is $230,000. So these two numbers added together. One of the things that has pushed this decision back to December is trying to iron out this issue with the mall. One of the other issues is what is also just being it was a difficult issue, and I'll leave it at that. But since June, the mall started making good faith payments on what they owed us. From June till now, those payments are $70,000. So long story short, if you use the current method, then I think it's fair to say that the mall owes us $442,000. That does not take into consideration if you create a new billing method for the mall, which takes into account the complexities and nuances of changing the sewer bill that better reflects a discharge and impact on our system. If you adopt the sewer rate this evening that is promulgated like we laid out and I just described, then the mall would have owed us $274,000. It's an adjustment of about 44%. I do believe that's reasonable because we can identify that the use is pretty much focused on the Class 3s, not the Class 1s that were being billed as a Class 3. We're creating a new class for that water closet, for that sink, for that employee only, which doesn't have an impact. And we're stopping officially the electric charges for any waste that ends up in our system off of the mall premises. So once it leaves the mall premises, that's a public waste issue. That's ours to manage moving forward. Hence, we shouldn't maybe charge them electric at lift stations that aren't owned and operated but are part of now the public collection system. Okay, so long story short, you modify the bill from October 17 to present, it's $274, less what they paid us, still the same number. Now they owe us about $62,000 in sewer bills. You add in the electric water component, $230, less the good faith payments, then the mall owes us $222,302.74. If you, in considering this tonight, I think you have to do this in a two-step process. The first thing you have to do is approve this sewer rate modification, because the sewer rate modification is calculated into the next item, which is the repayment agreement in the amount of $222,302,000, and they pay that over 36 months. So if you approve A, you would then approve B, potentially, and then the mall basically would have a three-pronged billing for the next 36 months. They would pay their electric water bill, they would pay the modified sewer bill, and then they would pay the catch-up payment of about $6,100 a month. After a lot of work and a lot of different communications, and the mall late last week agreed to the proposal here, and they have executed the repayment agreement. So now the matter's before you to consider how you'd like to move forward.
Question. So the $222,000, that's just the electric that they owe us?
$222 is the sewer with the modified rate.
Yeah.
Plus the water and electric, less the good faith payments of 70. So the 222 is everything they owe us through December 31st.
What portion of that is just the electric? Do you know?
200 and 230. Yeah, it's
Well,
230.
currently of the.
No, that brings them up through the 31st.
Okay.
Okay, before we get too involved in discussion, would someone actually introduce 6C1A? And let's talk about that.
I'll introduce 6C1A to be read by title only.
Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Leesburg, Florida, establishing a schedule of rates, charges, and fees applicable to the Lake Square Mall for wastewater service, setting forth findings, providing a savings clause, and providing an effective date.
Second.
Okay, so this is the portion where we're agreeing to this new system.
The new rate structure.
The new rate structure. Does anybody have discussion on the new rate structure?
Just one comment or question. Well, I mean, I fully support this analysis and fully support this whole proposal. But I am scratching my head on the meter issue. This goes before the current owner, but I guess my question is, I'm trying to push this back on the mall with all these meters and trying to get us out of that. Is that not possible?
Yeah, no, it's not.
Okay, I'll stop right there.
And the
I'll
meter
stop right
issue,
there.
look, and it's an easy answer, and I'll give it to you simple. The meter issue is simple. There's one water meter. We know it works. We've checked it a million times.
So you can cross-check it.
So the water works. Water gives you sewer.
I understand that.
Okay, so there is no water sewer meter issue. Electric, there's just a number of meters because we have different electric meters at different sites based on mall leases and different things.
Yeah,
so we've got a meter for the mall lift station, we've got a meter for a restaurant, blah, 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 repeat. So there's lots of electric meters. There's one water meter. We do not, I'm going to say it 3 times, we do not have a metering problem at the mall.
Okay, that's not where I was going with it. I was trying to help you and staff find an easier way, but I get it now.
The only complication with the mall is the breakdown of coming up with the individual units in the mall. It's not like your house. It's not like a business. It's not like Lowe's. It's a special entity that happens nowhere else in the city, where at one premises there's 80 different uses.
And I guess my basis of my comment is, I wish we could just push that back on the mall entirely. I don't like this. I mean, I'm fine with all this, but tracking it, whether it's monthly, quarterly, vacant, empty, I guess there's just no way.
This agreement does that. This agreement pushes it back on the mall and says, mall, you are required.
We trust them entirely. And I don't mean the way it sounds. We trust them, but we'll cross-check it and things like that. Yes. Okay, I'm fine now. I was trying to find a way to make your life a little easier on that one, but
it won't be. But that's okay.
I'm good.
My comment I would like to add, I really understand and appreciate how you came up with the estimated rate for the special closet, like with nothing but a closet, toilet, and sink. I think that's fair enough. As well as I like to add, as the mall grows and new units are added and taken away, that would be provided to us on a monthly basis as contracts join in, or would that be?
Yeah, quarterly is what the agreement calls for. We'll do it more than the mall wants to make sure it's right. We don't have issue. We've already been having those discussions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Berry?
Yes.
Commissioner Connell?
Yes.
Commissioner Eastman?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor Burry?
Yes. Somebody please introduce 6C1B.
I'll just ask to be read by title only.
Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Leesburg, Florida, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a repayment agreement for unpaid utility charges with Village Lake Promenade LLC for repayment of $222,302.74 over 36 months and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion on this item?
So Is this the only business out there that's like this? We audited our.
So it's the only major business that owes us over 6 figures.
Yeah. And there's no interest on this repayment plan?
I did not propose that.
I don't know. I'm just having a hard time with a repayment plan for this long when they quit paying their electric bill and we shut people off.
The only difference is that we did not shut people off.
Well,
we did from
the non-disconnect time.
From the non-disconnect time, we did not shut anybody off, and that was from March 2020 to November of 2021. We did not shut anybody off. So I think you have to look at them all that way. That policy, when we discussed it, April 13th, 2020, when the City Commission discussed this policy, April 13th, 2020, it was our first COVID meeting. We were all, all spaced and videoed, people, when we did all that. The concept is that the commission at the time wanted to help businesses that were getting shut down by the federal government, the mandatory shutdowns of certain things. And
we were also being encouraged by the federal government to work with people.
To work with people. And so the map of disconnect policies came from what other communities with municipal utilities did. We suspended cutoffs and late fees. We've also implemented that again, if you recall, and tonight we just stopped it. So we implemented that again when the power cost adjustment went crazy high because of gas. So I can't say that we allowed and we put together a policy on the electric and water side, on the utility side, that said, we're not going to disconnect you, we're not going to charge you late fees because we know your businesses are being hurt by COVID. The other side of the equation, where probably, again, this is the staff error that happened, was the billing discrepancy on the sewer was the catalyst to why the mall didn't pay their bills. And the history was pay, complain, stop. Fix something a little bit. De minimis. Pay, complain, stop, COVID. And so they're two separate issues. I realize they're the same, but I think if we're going to have the policy, that the initial policies were put together because we were trying to help folks, then I think it's justifiable that you don't charge interest. And it was specifically, the commission at the time wanted to help businesses that were forced to be shut down. And that is why the lenient repayment policy.
Any other comments?
I'd just like to add, I think I'm in agreement based on what Al just explained, as far as errors were on both sides, as far as the city's responsibility as well as the mall. It's an agreement. We've come to a happy medium, and we have signatures. So I think we should move forward and accept the payment plan and chalk it up as learning from our mistakes and how we move forward, and hope and pray that we never have another issue in which someone mandates how we should do our businesses and utilities. COVID was all new and a factor for everyone, and we're all learning, and people are still recovering and suffering from it. So I'm in agreement, and I think this is something that we should resolve and move forward so we could go forward.
Yeah, and I'd just like to make one comment. There's a lot of jobs. Should our decision be not to do this, you're talking about hundreds of jobs between what the mall employs and the 4 pads included. So, I think this is something we have to consider. Any other comment? Roll call.
Commissioner Cunnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Reisman?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Berry?
Yes.
Mayor Burry?
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 7, informational reports. We have none. City attorney items.
No, sir, no reports. I look forward to seeing everybody next week.
City manager items.
Yeah, just to follow up on Grant's comment, remember we've got the short turnaround. So December 18th is our next regular meeting, and then we got the break for the new year.
Yeah.
Roll call.
Sorry. Commissioner Peterson?
I do have one item. Lee Adult Center. It's time for those buildings to go. I'll start with that. We entered into an agreement with the current owner developer that we would allow him to knock both down upon the development being approved or breaking ground. It was tied to the property being developed. And that
increased his units, though.
Yeah, well, we haven't come to terms yet. We've cut back on the density.
There's no terms.
Right, so there's no deal right now. Deal right now. So this thing is lingering. We could code enforce him. I'm not sure that might get us something, but we continue to have blight in our city. Whether this guy develops it or he flips it to the next guy, I want these buildings to go ahead and go. It may have to go back to the Historical Preservation Board, but I think the Historical Board has agreed to let these be knocked down. The Planning and Zoning Commission agreed for these buildings to be knocked down, all contingent on development, but I'm to the point where I'm ready to just say, let's amend that and knock them down now for the benefit of our city and get this thing developed. Now I don't care if it's developed in 1 or 3 years. Right now I want it developed like yesterday.
I don't know, but maybe Grant can speak to this, but we had a conditional approval to knock both buildings down.
Yes.
He wanted 63. We came back and said, no, we'll do 50 or 51. I forget the number.
The numbers.
And then we had two months on it for him to sign the paper. He never signed the paper. So technically what exists on Lee School right now is knock down the
one building.
The north building, save the south building for 14 apartments, and add 49 condos. That's a PUD that's approved as a small PUD, and that's got a 10-year 10-year run on it. So knocking down the buildings is not something we can technically.
Well, we can amend it.
I don't know if it was a 4 or 10 if we'd gone to 10 then, but I don't know what we could do.
Here would be my recommendation for the commission. I have spoken with Mr. Mansfield on a regular basis. I think Mr. Mansfield is serious about redevelopment of the site. He's a developer, but he just feels like Intuit, blame, I think at this stage really doesn't matter. He can't develop it under the PUD that's approved. Mr. Mayor, you explained that perfectly.
I get
there is a PUD right now that is approved that he could start moving forward on, but he doesn't get to knock down both buildings. Mr. Mansfield wants to knock down both buildings. Here's what I would suggest. If the wish of the commission is for me to get back to Mr. Mansfield, I would suggest that we bargain with Mr. Mansfield, that we'll agree to knock down both buildings, knock out, expire all the PUDs, the existing PUD, everything is expired, and that gives him a blank canvas to come back. The only fly in this giddy up is that it has to go back to the historic board. So the historic board has to be the one that says yes. But I think if this body wants to see those buildings knocked down, and you want to see a new PUD, I'm pretty sure that Mr. Mansfield will bite onto that. And so then we would go back to the historic board with an agreement for demolition that says, you knock it down, all the PUDs are expired. I don't know if that would need to come back to the commission. Maybe it would, but it definitely has a stop with the historic board. They're the ones who have to give the approval on knocking it down, and you guys are changing the deal that says knock it down if you build. You guys are now saying just knock it down and start from scratch. So a couple of agreements have to happen. That's what I'm hearing you say, Commissioner?
I'm saying I want them knocked down because this thing is lingering.
If there's consensus from the commission to do that, I will go visit with Mr. Mansfield.
My fear is if this thing's just going to drag out 1, 2, 3 years. I think he has invested in other properties in our town. I think he's doing, isn't he the down? If I'm wrong, it doesn't matter. I thought he had, but.
No kind of guy.
Okay, okay.
Something like that.
Yeah, it was a it was a long process to get to where we're at, to get the community to agree to knock them down with development. And the fact that it just lingers on, I'm just to the point where I think it's important enough, just go ahead and knock them down. This guy can develop it. If he don't want to develop it, flip it. I don't care if he flips it, but at least my buildings are gone. I mean, and when I say demo it, I mean, I want it to be a grass field. I mean, no games. I don't want that ugly wall. There's some other debris on the property. I just want it a beautifully mowed piece of property that is no longer blighting our city. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'd like to see that, but I think we've got a legal, he's got this PUD that exists.
Well, but that's what
he's saying he'll go away. He's saying he'll agree.
We make it go away.
Okay.
We make it go away. And part of, yeah.
And if he came back and honored it, who cares?
You can amend the PUD,
Yeah, that's
right?
what I'm
I mean, I
saying.
think, as Al said, historic's got to be involved, but the PUD could be changed to the commission.
And the historic's agreement was to leave one building?
Historic's last agreement was to tear both buildings down.
Oh, okay.
We've come a long.
For 63 condos.
Yeah, we've come a long way on
We
this
said
thing.
no because we only wanted 51.
And the buildings have been a hindrance to every developer. They're a hindrance to this developer. It's just time to move on from this property. With the historical board agreeing.
One of the other, no, I don't want to complicate stuff. One of the other things I think we need to look into on a staff level is credits for impact fees and credits for stormwater. So before our eyes jump out of our head, credit for impact fees should be, there's a recognized school site on that's connected to the public system. Maybe he's entitled to some type of impact fee credits for the school. Second, there's a school site that maybe there's some other things that we can do as far as stormwater to where if we can get them some stormwater credits or maybe get the stormwater to a different spot, Fountain Lake, that can help, that we can work with the district on and come up with something creative. Helping them out on those two issues would definitely help get the site developed.
And
So if you kind of do that concept to throw out the PUD, let them tear down the buildings, and then work with them and preserve some credits potentially for a school site for impact fees as well as some stormwater stuff, then I think you can start encourage development.
And my only reaction to that comment is because of the age of this building, I got to believe my infrastructure is not good. So why would I give them a credit?
I don't disagree.
Okay. No, I'm just.
Those are things that I think we.
No, I mean, I think it's worth looking into. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just going.
These are the other tools that we never really looked at.
Yeah.
To get it going. So, look, this is like Wednesday morning quarterbacking now, right? So it's, every way we've turned on this, we haven't had a success, and now we're back at it again, trying to come up with a way to encourage the removal of that blight in the middle of our community.
And I fully support credits if our infrastructure is good. I just don't want to go pre-agree to credits and then find out we're going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars because the infrastructure is lead pipes or whatever.
Pipes and asbestos.
Lead pipes that we're going to have to take out and all that crap.
The impact is on the public system. So once it leaves the school site and then goes into our collection system and our treatment capacities, at one time we were treating X number of gallons that came out of the Lee School that went into the sewer plant. That impact's already been felt. Okay. So maybe we need to come up with a, so it's got nothing to do with
all the on-site work falls on him anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just thinking out loud there. Thank you. So there's nothing to vote on or nothing to.
And
point well taken. Let him get back with.
That's something y'all want me to talk to Barry about?
Talk to Barry.
Okay.
Where he is.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Berry?
Nothing.
Commissioner Connell?
No.
Commissioner Eastman?
Not tonight.
Mayor Burry?
Yeah, I got a few things. So, number one on the agenda, we had the last quarterly MPO meeting, which is the Lake Sumter Municipal, kind of the DOT, what's going on with road projects. And as you guys have heard many, many times, the Perkins to Mill Street widening of 441 so that the 30-mile length of 441 from north of the villages to Donnelly Street in Mount Dora would be all 6 lanes. At this latest meeting, that project had been in the top 5 for, Dan Roebuck told me it was when he was doing it. So for the last 4 or 5 years, it has been a project at the top of the list. That project is now a resurfacing. So we are not going to get a 6-lane through Leesburg. That they're going to resurface for over $3 million, and we still don't have the 6-lane, which means places like Lake Street, where it comes into 441, where our largest employer, are trying to make that turn there. Places like Griffin Park right there, the only public boat ramp on Lake Griffin, our lakefront city, is still going to be encumbered by poor turn lanes and not addressed. And I just think it, from my position, that they're making a bad decision. They're throwing money at something that needs to be 6-laned. So that, just wanted all y'all to know that,
And I'll just chime in just to pile on government a little bit more. I know they did all the condemnations. They've already taken all the property. That's what's crazy. We have the property, the right of way.
But it is not. It is now
and by the way,
a $3 million resurfacing to occur in 26.
And by the way, that was done like 15 years ago. The condemnation.
They've been working on this forever. So, you got a question?
I was going to say, is there anything we can do? And Al was.
I don't really know. This is a DOT thing. They heard me. Just like I'm talking right now. That's how I talked to them at the meeting, and I told them, it's just a bad idea, and they, DOT shakes their head, and I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that can be done.
I mean, the de minimis is pass a resolution and send it to FDOT and send it to Representative Truenow and Senator Baxley.
Yeah. I mean, just let people know.
Shall we put that on the to-do list?
On the to-do list. Also at that meeting, just as an aside, there was 2 gentlemen that got up during public discussion, and they were residents of the villages on the Sumter County side that had homes located very close to the turnpike. And they were representing their neighborhoods. I forget the name, they name all those neighborhoods different. But these guys were wanting sound wall barrier put up on the turnpike. And apparently the villages within their contracting spelled out that they would not do that. Before you moved in, you knew that they would not do that. So these guys were looking for other remedies to get sound wall. Okay, so my mind just thinks we're approving City of Leesburg residents along the turnpike south of 33, and I don't want the city to bring in hundreds of new residents that then show up here and want us to provide sound wall because the turnpike is too loud. And I don't know if I'm making a reach by worrying about that, but I talked to Al about it. Al's going to talk to Dan about it, and I just think in our PUDs, or we need to be very careful about not having our liability be the one that's got to put up for someone who bought on a busy road.
Right. So
it's loud.
And on that note, as I told the mayor and I spoke to Dan, what we'll do is we will get back with the developer in this time period, talking about that buffer, berm, and the trees, or wall and the trees. Probably they're going to go to a berm and then trees on top of a wall. But then I think also one of the other things that we've done on these PUDs where it gets put next to someplace, industrial park, is a disclosure statement in the PUD that says the developer will inform the residents of that potential problem, so that when they do come back, we can say, well, you were told.
Right.
And that's pretty much what the villages did.
What the villages did.
There was a disclosure that we forced the developers to do, therefore.
But they're looking for remedies, and that'll be us, 10 years from now when there's houses there. So, that's just something to think about for the future.
Well, my reaction is if you bought a house on the turnpike, I'm not really feeling that sorry for you.
I get you. Al already said something about the second meeting in December being next week, so we'll see you then. The only other thing, as mayor, in our agenda packet that you guys look at all the time, if you get to item 6, the public hearings and non-routine items, there's always in here this comprehensive plan information sign-up sheet yellow. And in the 3 years I've been here, I don't know what the sign-up sheet yellow is, and I'd like to just see it go away.
Done.
Okay.
You know, I don't think it serves a purpose, and if someone were to ask what it is, I'm not really sure, you know, what purpose it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thought is perhaps to just make sure everybody's signed in that had
wants
anything
to
to
talk.
say, that wants to talk.
I've been to other.
And so if there's witnesses and things like that down the road, you'd have a bead on who those folks were.
But we have never utilized that in my 3. Mike, have you had any? You're the longest tenured, so.
Yeah, always it seems like.
Yeah.
But no.
So I'd like to
I think we used it. We may have incorporated on one hostile, the electric meter. I'll call it a hostile meeting. We might have used it on that one, but I'm not even sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and that's all I got.
Move for adjournment.
Second.
Done. Thank you, guys.